Need computer training for a group or office? Contact us today to get a free demo of our training at www.teachucomp.com/enterprise-licensing. To change the fill color in line or border settings for a selected image, click the Fill in Line category icon within the Format Picture task pane. First, make sure that your image is selected so that the Format tab appears in the ribbon. And then open up the Format Picture task pane and click the Fill in Line category groupings. You can click the Fill category grouping to expand it if needed and display the options that you have for setting a fill color for the selected image. To use these settings effectively with images, the selected image must contain a transparent section. If the image is already completely filled with its own content, then changing these settings would produce no visible effect. However, if your selected image contains a transparent background, you can use these settings to format the background area within the image. You can also select the No Fill option to remove any fill effect from the selected image. In order to make sure that our image has a transparent background, we selected it and then clicked the Remove Background button. All of the parts in purple are the parts that will be removed. And if there are any parts that you would like to keep, make sure you mark the areas that you would like to keep, and then click Keep All Changes. Now, since we have a transparent background, our fill options will show up. You can click the Solid Fill option to fill the background of the image with the color of your choosing. First, choose a color from the Color drop-down. Then, use the Transparency slider to set a level of transparency that should be applied to the background fill. You can either use the slider or use the spinner box and the arrows. You can select the Gradient Fill option to fill the background of the image with a multicolor gradient. A gradient is simply a color that transitions in hue and/or transparency from one angle to another. You can choose one of the preset gradients available by making a selection from the Preset Gradients drop-down. If you want to make your own custom gradient, then you can use the additional buttons and sliders to customize it. Use the Type drop-down to select the type of gradient you want to use. Linear, which changes colors from one side to another across a straight line. Radial, which changes colors starting from an origin point and then radiates outwards in a circular pattern. Rectangular, which changes color starting from an origin point and then radiates outwards in a rectangular pattern. Or Path, which follows the path of a line that you draw. Once you have selected a type of gradient, you can then select the specific variation that you would like to use from the Direction drop-down. If you selected a linear gradient type, then you may select the angle at which the gradient changes by entering the desired angle in degrees into the Angle spinner box, or use the arrows. The Gradient Stop section allows you to set the number and appearance of changing points in the gradient's color scheme. At its most basic level, a gradient must have at least 2 gradient stops. For example, if a gradient changed from black to white in a linear fashion, then it would have at least 2 gradient stops. You can have more if desired. In the Gradient Stop section, click on a gradient stop to select the gradient whose properties you wish to set. You can click and drag on one of the stops to change its position within the gradient, or you can enter its position as a percentage into the Position spinner box. You can then use the Color drop-down to set what color you want the gradient to be at the selected point. You can then use the Brightness slider to set the brightness of the selected color. You can then use the Transparency slider to set the transparency level of the color that you selected at the chosen point. To add more gradient stops to your gradient, you can simply click into the gradient line at the spot where you wish to place the new stop. You could also click the Add Gradient Stop button to the right of the gradient line to add a new stop as well. If you wish to remove a stop, select the gradient stop that you wish to delete, and then click the Remove Gradient Stop button. You will notice that once you click on a gradient stop, it appears highlighted. That is how you know that that is the gradient stop which you are going to delete. At the bottom of the task pane, you can check the Rotate with Shape checkbox to set the gradient fill to rotate with the image if the image is rotated. Back at the top of the task pane, in the Fill category options, you can choose Picture or Texture Fill. This will fill the background of the selected image with a texture or another image of your choosing. Textures are simply preset images that are included in Word. To apply a preset texture, select a choice from the Texture dropdown. To use a picture located on your computer, click the File button to open the Insert Picture dialog box. Using this dialog box, you can select the image file from your computer to insert. You can also copy an image to use and then click the Clipboard button to paste the copied contents of your clipboard into the background of the image. We do not have anything on our clipboard at this moment, so that is why it appears grayed out. If you want to insert an online picture into the background, click the Online button. This will open the Insert Pictures window where you can search for online pictures to insert into the background of the image. You can set the transparency to apply to the background by using the transparency slider or the spinner box. If you want to tile or repeat the background as a texture, you can check the Tile Picture as Texture checkbox. Then, in the Tiling Options section, you can set the Offset X and Offset Y options to set the amount of horizontal and vertical offset to apply to the tiled background image. You can use the Scale X and Scale Y spinner boxes to set the percentage of the image to display in the tiled background. You can then use the Alignment drop-down to set the alignment of the background image within the main image. You can use the Mirror Type drop-down to select the type of reflection to apply to the tiled images in the background. If you deselect this checkbox, you will instead see offset options for the image appear. You can change the background image's offset settings here. Use the Offset Left, Offset Right, Offset Top and Bottom spinner boxes to input the percentage by which the image should be offset from the selected side. Also, if you want the background to rotate with the image if the main image is rotated, then check the Rotate with Shape checkbox. To set a pattern fill for the selected image, choose the Pattern Fill option. Then select a desired pattern to use as the fill for the image from the choices shown in the Pattern section. You can also use the foreground and background color boxes to choose foreground and background colors for the pattern. The next category grouping shown is the Line category grouping. As applied to images, these settings change the appearance of a selected picture's border. The three options shown are No Line, Solid Line, or Gradient Line. If you do not want the selected picture to have a border or wish to remove a border that has been applied, select the No Line option. To apply a solid colored line border to a selected image, click the Solid Line button. Then select a color for the line border from the Color drop-downs buttons palette of color choices. If the colors shown aren't quite what you need, notice that you can select the More Colors command at the bottom of the color palette in order to open up the Colors dialog box. In the Colors dialog box, you can create almost any color you desire. This dialog box is available in almost all of the places where you can choose a color within Microsoft Office products. You can either click the Standard tab and then select one of the colors shown in the honeycomb of color choices, or you can click the Custom tab and then click to select the color you want from the rainbow gradient shown. Note that at the bottom of both tabs, you can use the Transparency slider to set the level of transparency to apply. Once you have made your selection, click the OK button. You can also use the transparency slider within the Format Picture task pane. The options that then follow within the Format Picture task pane are the same for both the solid line color choice and the gradient line choice. So let's first examine how to apply a gradient border line and then review the settings that both solid and gradient lines have in common. To apply a gradient line, select the gradient line option. You can apply a gradient to a border the same way that you can apply a gradient as a background fill. So these options should be familiar to you, as we just covered them in the fill section. You can use the same settings within the line category to create a gradient line border. After creating your solid line or gradient line, you will then see additional line options that the two styles have in common at the bottom of the Format Picture task pane. Use the width spinner box to set the width of the line and points. If you want to have a multi-line border, use the compound type drop-down to select the style of multi-line appearance to use. You can use the dash type drop-down to select a style of line to apply if you want to create a dashed or dotted line border. The cap type drop-down allows you to change the appearance of the ends of lines. This setting is not often used when applying picture borders, however the join type setting is. The join type drop-down allows you to set the appearance of the junction points where the two lines meet. These last few settings shown are only used when formatting arrow shapes and will be grayed out and unavailable when formatting picture borders. Like what you see? Get a free demo of our training for groups of 5 or more at www.teachucomp.com/enterprise-licensing.